Hi, Jeff Simon here for SocialFlight. The next step in our build here of our T-51 Mustang is to be able to install our fuselage tank. Now, this aircraft has an optional fuselage tank that we have right here. And this tank goes in what's called the turtle deck of the aircraft, just behind the hatch shelf section for the rear passenger. So we're here at the rear side of the aircraft, and this is the top section. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to mount this fuselage tank here. It will end up going with through the front part of this bulkhead, and we're going to install it by using straps that go into mounting points on the fuselage frame. That's how Titan Aircraft has designed the structure that holds the tank. What happens is that, if you remember from early on in our build, we attached the front and aft fuselage halves of the frame. Well, if you have this option, what happens is that these brackets on the front, which have a tube in them, go in place there right where those halves go together. So we're going to take those bolts out and we're going to put these mounting points in. Now, in addition to that, further aft on the fuselage frame, we put these other brackets in place. These are brackets that mount going towards the outside of the aircraft, and so the skin will rivet through these points, and then again on the inside we have this tube. Now, the purpose of the tube is that we have on the top and bottom of the tank these straps, and the straps have there another tube and a bolt that will go through that will essentially sandwich the tank between the straps and hold that in place. So let's get to work getting the mounting points in place, getting this ready, getting the tank put here, and then we'll move ahead. So, quick review of this tank. First of all, we've got the fill port. The fill port's here, which on the aircraft ends up being high and to the left side of the aircraft, coming out through the turtle deck. Then we have on the top the vent, and then on the bottom here, which ends up, of course, in the tail dragger, being in the low position. This is actually where the outlet is for the fuel. So, now what holds this tank in place, as we mentioned before, are these straps, and each of the straps is marked. They bend and they go kind of wrapping around the tank and supporting it from the top and from the bottom. Now, the straps are made of steel and the tank is made of aluminum. That sets up a situation that we have to be concerned about for dissimilar metal corrosion. Two different types of metal, steel and aluminum, when put close together, have an electrolytic connection that takes place and a chemical process, an electrical process, which sets up for corrosion. So we've gone and primed both the tank and the straps, but I'd like to go one step further on these. So what I did is I went and got some 1 1/4 inch heat shrink tubing, and I've taken this heat shrink tubing, and what we're going to do is we're going to cut it to these lengths. We're going to put it over these straps just like that, and then actually go and use a heat gun to shrink it on, and that should give us enough of a distance so we have this nice insulating coating that will allow us to safely get the grip the tank, but not allow the dissimilar metals to come in contact with each other. So let's get that all put on. We're going to have to also mark them because each of them is different and they're all stamped for the location they go in, and we're going to lose the stamp when we put the heat shrink on, and then we'll start getting this tank mounted. Okay, boy, I'll tell you, that came out absolutely beautifully. You can see up close how nice and tight that is, And I'm not going to take credit for this. If it didn't go well, I guess I would take credit. But this idea actually was from Paul Morrell, who a very, very good friend of mine and also co-worker at SocialFlight. And Paul has built 2 kit foxes. He's actually completing his 2nd kit fox right now. So he's a very experienced builder. And when I came to him with that question about these straps, his first suggestion was using this shrink wrap tubing on it. So shout out to Paul for an idea that after testing it came out really, really great. So let's do the other 3 of these, get it set, and mount that tank. Now, according to the manual, we start with the top straps because the bolts, of course, are going to go down. Anytime on an aircraft that you're working with hardware, there's certain rules that you follow that safety make the aircraft as safe as possible. One of those things is that if you're going to install a bolt, you always go from fore to aft. So air, in theory, would be pushing the bolt in, keep the bolt in even if the nut falls off. And then the same thing is true anytime that you're putting a bolt and a nut in vertically, you put it in top down. The theory again is at least the bolt will stay in place if something were to happen and the nut would come off. So in this case, that rule of course wouldn't necessarily help you too much because the tank would fall if things fell apart, but it still is a rule that we follow. And so according to the instructions, we start by putting these bolts in along with spacers, and then they go through what we've put here in place, and then we're going to put the tank in underneath that and put the bottom strap on from there. All right, so that's it for the installation of the fuselage tank in our Titan T-51D Mustang. Now things are really going to start to move with the build at this point. We're going to put the turtle deck on, we're going to start to add a lot of the systems, complete the controls, a lot of very cool things coming up. Until next time, I'm Jeff Simon from SocialFlight. Be sure to check out SocialFlight.com and the free SocialFlight mobile apps for Apple and Android devices. You can see tens of thousands of aviation events and destinations, $100 hamburger at airport restaurants, all sorts of very cool things. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel here. Message us, you may be able to win one of these T-51 Mustang build t-shirts from us. Until next time, thank you so much for joining us. Blue skies.